Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our 7th and last session of webinars in the Connect to Learning Series 3. Today we have Erika with us, who will be speaking about regulating emotions in the classroom, but later on Michelle will introduce her and also introduce the team. As I said earlier, this is our last session of the 7 sessions that we've had. We've had a very good audience for this session, and we've had also very good feedback on the presenters and also on the teams that we've presented within this series. As usual, I will be sharing with you the Google form so that you can register your participation. Eventually, if you have attended 5 of the 7 sessions that we've had, you will be receiving a certificate of participation issued by the Faculty of Education. But you will be receiving this by the end of this month. So I think I can leave the word to Michelle so that she can introduce Erika. Thank you, Michelle.
Hi, good evening, and thank you, James. Hello to all. Happy New Year to you all. As James have told you, we have Dr. Erika Galia with us today. She has recently been awarded her doctorate by the Institute of Education, University College London. Her research study focuses on investigating cognitive and emotional developmental processes within the Maltese early childhood classrooms, specifically emotion regulation strategies. She is currently an educational consultant within local schools on quality assurance, curriculum development, and professional teacher training. She's also a visiting lecturer within the Faculty of Education, University of Malta. She has 10 years of experience in primary school teaching with a specialization in early years, together with a 10-year history of working in the education management industry as deputy head within an independent primary school, leading curriculum studies, continuous professional development, school development planning, and quality assurance. Educational neuroscience is a research area she is extremely passionate about. She has set up the Educational Neuroscience Hub with the aim of creating more awareness and a better understanding of the development of the brain within the context of teaching and learning. The intention is to provide educators and parents with the most recent evidence-based practices and scientific research to improve pedagogy, strategies, and intervention in schools and at home. Now, some brief information about today's topic. Children's mental health has become an international and societal priority. The prevalence of mental health difficulties has exceedingly increased for various reasons. In Malta, the development of anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts have increased amongst children and youth in the past few years. This has come from Richmond Foundation in 2022. There is now a growing body of evidence that demonstrates that education regulation strategies would safeguard against mental and adjustment problems later on in life and promote better effective learning within the classroom, leading to improved academic performance. In this session, Erika will outline these emotion regulation strategies that will help support the children with their varied emotions that are considered to be intrusive and act as barriers towards academic success. In turn, these emotion regulation strategies will help support the children's emotions, thoughts, and behavior to result in higher academic achievement and enable the children to grow into more resilient beings. And with that comment, I leave the floor to Dr. Erika Galia to start her session.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, James. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can, Erika.
Yes, Erika.
Okay, yes, okay, we can start. Okay. Okay, so Thank you, Michelle and James. I'm very pleased to be presenting my research and one moment, because it's okay. In fact, the development of emotion regulation has been the focus of much research due to its long-term impact on an individual's well-being and mental health, which has been given a lot of prominence and attention in the last few years. The reason being that on an international basis, we are seeing an epidemic of emotional dysregulation, that is when emotions are not stabilized or regulated in very young children, resulting in disturbances in parent-child and even teacher-student relationships. So by the end of the presentation, you will understand what emotion regulation is, understand why emotion regulation is important, recognize the processes and strategies of emotion regulation, appreciate the importance of co-regulation likely to lead to self-regulation, and recognize the effect of emotion regulation on the students in the classroom. So throughout the presentation, I will be referring to two parts of the brain, which are connected to emotion regulation, mainly the prefrontal cortex, which covers the frontal part of the brain. Its function is a crucial one since it involves planning complex behavior, decision-making, critical thinking, and moderating social behavior, amongst many more roles, as we will see shortly. Then we have the amygdala, which is found in the limbic system, which is the affective or emotive part of the brain, since it has a key role in the processing of emotions. And then we have the hippocampus, which involves the formation of new memories and is also associated with learning and emotion. However, my focus will be on the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala within this presentation. So let's start off by talking about emotion and cognition. So is the link between emotion and cognition a myth or a reality? So unfortunately, many a times, educators believe that emotion and cognition are not linked and tend to ignore the emotion, expecting the child to perform at his or her best at the task at hand. We've heard the distinction before, differentiated as matters of the heart and matters of the mind, but there is no truth to this at all. A complete misconception about emotion and cognition is that they are two separate entities. However, it is both emotion and cognition that are interlinked and equally contribute to the control of thought and behavior. In fact, a key area in the field of neuroscience is the interaction between emotion and cognition, the interaction of which is essential for the adaptation of the individuals to the environment. It is emotion and cognition that work together to activate particular brain areas, systems, and behaviors that seek adaptable responses to the event. Now, this interaction plays a significant role in the attentional deployment, what we call attention, and the processes and regulation of emotion and cognition, which are integrated very early in development and have a great impact on later development too. In fact, emotions serve as an influential medium for increasing or impeding learning. Therefore, they are critical in the student's academic development, which we will see in the next slide. So the interrelation between cognition and emotion enhances what we call the executive functions or higher order skills. For example, memory, metacognition, problem solving, critical thinking, inhibitory control, leadership skills, self-esteem, attention, moderating social behavior, organizing and planning. These are what we call the executive functions that can be thought of as the command central of our cognitive skills. Now, when our emotions are so intense that we become dysregulated, as I mentioned before, when our emotions are not stabilized, our executive function will not work at full capacity. And if we have difficulty stabilizing or regulating our intense emotions, then our executive function, or what we call higher order skills, will be compromised. Our ability to think clearly and put executive function into action is directly related to what we feel and how intensely we feel it. In a dysregulated state, the two areas of the brain that we mentioned earlier, the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, have difficulty communicating with one another, leaving our emotions in charge. So when our emotions take over, then we would not be able to reason well. Our reasoning, our prefrontal cortex does not function well. But as our emotions decrease in their intensity, they become easier to manage. And when emotions are well managed, then the pathways in the brain reopen, freeing up space for executive function to mobilize. So therefore, it is crucial that our emotions are regulated and that emotion and cognition are working in tandem to function well. So we often think that it is negative emotions that may disrupt learning, but it is both negative and positive emotions that hinder students' learning or hinder implementing the task at hand, and influence the students' executive function, their higher order skills that we mentioned previously, found in their prefrontal cortex, the frontal part of their brain. Now, examples of negative emotions that can hinder learning are, for example, anxiety for an upcoming presentation or upcoming school concert, stress due to the upcoming exams, or anger at a friend for name calling. But it is also positive emotions that hinder learning. We tend to focus on the negative and not on the positive. But for example, positive emotions in classroom that may hinder learning could be excitement for an excursion or a particular school activity or project, the anticipation of a school holiday or the weekend, or due to a sports tournament. And there are also many other situations. So what effects does poor emotion regulation have on children? Now, research shows that in educational settings, preschool children with low emotion regulation skills have more conflict with their teachers. Poor emotion regulation has detrimental effects on school performance and social relationships, and it may also result in internalizing and externalizing disorders and contribute to societal problems. When we talk about internalizing disorders, we refer to those disorders that affect the way a person thinks or feels, such as depression, anxiety disorders, and attention deficit disorders. And when we talk about externalizing disorders, we refer to those disorders with behaviors that can be observed directly, such as conduct disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and anger management issues. Now, poor emotion regulation can lead to the following: absenteeism, high rates of early school leavers, low skills and competences, poor school performance. So it is very, very important that integrating knowledge about emotion regulation strategies within the education system is implemented, because it can lead to the following, such as also lack of social relationships and deficits in higher order cognitive processes. Now, poor emotion regulation can also lead to the following: eating disorders, self-harm, substance abuse, crime, violence, and also suicide. In fact, according to local and international studies, the prevalence of these maladaptive disorders and addictions, particularly suicide and suicidal attempts, have increased in the past few years, both locally and on an international basis. In fact, according to the World Health Organizations, many suicides happen impulsively in moments of crisis, with a breakdown in the ability to deal with life stresses, such as financial problems, relationship breakup, or chronic pain and illness. So this is why it is crucial to teach children emotion regulation skills from a very young age, so they learn how to deal with the everyday stresses they face, leading them to become resilient individuals. And as they grow older, they are able to handle the bigger problems. So these are signs of a child having difficulty with emotion regulation. Poor emotion regulation can manifest in irritable temperaments, disruptive and oppositional defiant behaviors, emotional reactions, physical or verbal threats, erratic, irrational, or explosive behaviors. And we often see these behaviors in the classroom. So what is emotion regulation? And this sums the term emotion regulation pretty well. Emotion regulation is the processes by which individuals influence which emotions they have, when they have them, and how they experience and express these emotions. So, in other words, emotion regulation is the processes, the strategies we use to increase, maintain, or decrease one or more components of emotional response, be it physiological, behavioral, or experiential. Now, when we talk about the physiological response to emotion, we refer to the body's reaction to the emotion, the blood pressure, the heart rate, the sweating, the headaches. When we talk about the behavioral response to emotion, we refer to the outward expression of emotion, the crying, the laughing, the screaming, or the aggression. And when we talk about the experiential response to emotion, then we are referring to the internal or subjective experience of emotion, that is the feeling happy, sad, proud, mad, amongst many other emotions. So these responses are components of emotion. We have the physiological, the behavioral, and the experiential. When combined, create the person's overall experience of emotion. So when we regulate our emotions, we are regulating one or more of these responses to the emotion. So we know that emotion regulation leads to appropriate behavior. So first we have the stimulus, that is what triggers the emotion. Then the emotion comes about, filters through the brain, and interprets the emotion using the prefrontal cortex to eventually result in behavior. Now, at a very young age, the prefrontal cortex would not have fully matured, and therefore, reasoning skills are not fully formed either. And this is where the teacher or the caregiver's role, such as a parent, is of great importance, especially in early childhood. The teacher, within the classroom, using the emotion regulation strategies, which we are about to see soon, would help the child interpret that emotion felt in a positive way to eventually lead to proper behavior. Now, the teacher, this way, would have helped the child in the classroom remain calm and would result in the child being able to focus on the task at hand. If a child is too worried or too preoccupied with negative thoughts to pay attention in class, or too reactive to manage frustrations whilst taking a maths test, for instance, the child's academic performance will most likely suffer. So the ability to properly cope with emotions allows a child to experience an inner sense of calm. So emotion regulation is considered to be one of the most far-ranging and influential processes at the interface of cognition and emotion. And this is due to the fact that emotion regulation is a component of mental health, which encompasses a person's ability to be productive, have a sound interpersonal life, and make positive social relationships. It also helps in being able to handle the everyday stresses that children are faced with. Many children nowadays are not able to handle a small problem they come across and tend to cry, get into a tantrum, or turn violent in order to solve the problem. So once the teachers understand the importance of adopting emotion regulation strategies within the classroom, they pave the way for their students to succeed academically. It enables their students to refocus attention and to thrive towards one goals, which enhances social skills, social competence, and greater popularity amongst peers. In addition, behavioral control is improved, children are more successful at learning tasks and less likely to exhibit withdrawn or off-task behaviors. So children's skills at emotion regulation will help them encounter distressing situations both at school and at home. So what are the strategies that one can use to regulate children's emotions? So the strategies are based on Gross's model of emotion regulation. So down here, it explains how one attends to a situation that crops up. So a situation occurs, we attend to it, we appraise it, and we respond to the situation through our behavior, which takes us back to the situation to attend to it if need be. So the first 4 strategies from situation selection to cognitive change are what we call the antecedent-focused strategies, which means they occur before an emotional response is fully generated. Response modulation, that is when we tend to suppress our emotions, is considered to be a response-focused strategy, which is a strategy that is adopted after the emotion is felt and the behavior is impacted. Now, the first most forward-looking antecedent strategy is situation selection, in which a person chooses to enter into or avoid a situation. However, the boundaries of situation selection are not always clear and not always an easy task for children to choose at such a young age, even when older. For example, a student in the class does not have the freedom to move to a different room to be able to feel better about the situation he or she is in. Therefore, in my presentation, I will focus on the other 4 emotion regulation strategies, which we will now delve deeper into and give a classroom example of each. So our first antecedent-focused strategy is situation modification, which refers to adjusting a situation to change its emotional impact. Now, a classroom example of this is a group of students are having difficulty working in a group. One child gets particularly angry, and the teacher intervenes and defines the rules for each child. So there the teacher has modified the situation. Our second strategy, which is antecedent, that happens before an emotion is felt, is attention deployment via distraction, which refers to redirecting attention away from a situation. And the classroom situation, an example of this is a child lost his tooth in the classroom and is visibly upset and scared. The teacher then explains the story of the tooth fairy. Teacher wraps the tooth in an envelope and addresses it to the tooth fairy. So here the teacher distracted the child and redirected his attention or her attention away from the situation. Then we have cognitive change via reappraisal, and the class which refers to the ability to change how a person looks at the situation or the meaning that they put behind the situation. So one is reframing the situation. And a classroom example of this is a child has difficulty conforming to classrooms. The teacher then explains in depth that the rules will be beneficial for him to abide by and exist for their own safety. And then we have the last emotion regulation strategy, which is response modulation, which involves the efforts to modify an emotion after it has been fully generated. So one feels the emotion and then suppresses it. And an example of this is a child accidentally breaks her friend's ruler. Both girls start to argue and cry. The teacher tells them to stop making a fuss and forget all about it. And many teachers, due to the vastness in curriculum and time limitations, tend to revert to this strategy, response modulation, or the suppression of the children's emotions to move on with what they have planned to do in class. And they are unaware of the harm these suppressive strategies cause. So if suppressing emotions happens from time to time, it will not have dramatic effects on the individual. However, if adopted all the time and continuously, then this can have serious psychological conditions in the long term. The solution to suppressing emotions is to learn new, healthier ways to regulate students' emotions, and if teachers are aware of alternative strategies to rely on, then teachers are less likely to resort to pushing those students' thoughts away. So the teacher needs to present children with a rich repertoire of strategies to be able to tackle their emotions effectively. And these are the antecedent focus strategies that happen before an emotion occurs. So the antecedent focus strategies are those that are recommended and encouraged for use in the classroom. So how does the development of children's emotion regulation occur? So children are not born with emotion regulation capabilities. Children learn these emotion regulation skills through a nurturing relationship with a caring teacher or caregiver. In this case, could be a parent within a structured and supportive environment in order to learn and practice these new skills. The teacher, through co-regulation, supports and scaffolds the children's thoughts, behavior, and emotion within the occurring situation, adopting the emotion regulation strategies. Now, co-regulation will look different at different ages as child capacity for self-regulation grows, but it always remains a critical resource across development. Co-regulation can also happen between a more regulated peer who co-regulates with a less regulated peer, using the same emotion regulation strategies that I presented earlier, and we call this peer or other regulation. Now, the implementation of these emotion regulation strategies is based on Vygotsky's scaffolding, in which the expert, in this case the teacher or a more regulated peer, supports the novice, the less regulated child, and builds on the already acquired knowledge or skill level just above where the student currently is, until the child is able to self-regulate. So in this perspective, the concept of these interactive supportive processes has been built on Vygotsky's notion of the zone of proximal development. Now, the children at any age would need constant repetition of these emotion regulation strategies, as is done with the academic skills or any other skill in that case, so that these emotion regulation strategies are internalized and result in self-regulation. That is, the child regulating his or her emotions on his or her own by adopting these emotion regulation strategies. So how do we co-regulate? I wanted to be more concrete when talking about co-regulation in the classroom, since it is through co-regulation, which is considered a crucial pedagogical tool, that the teacher will be able to regulate the children's emotions, which may eventually lead to self-regulation. So when co-regulating, we must be aware of the child's emotions, focus on the emotion instead of the behavior. We often tend to focus on the behavior rather than the emotion. We often reprimand a child for misbehaving when the behavior is the result of an emotion felt by the child. So when we focus on the behavior rather than the emotion, many a times we end up suppressing the child's emotions rather than reframing the meaning behind the situation or modifying the situation to make the child feel better. So it's important that we focus on the emotion, because the emotion is the result of, because the behavior is the result of the emotion felt. So we need to recognize emotion as an opportunity for connection or teaching, pay attention to the tone of voice and expression of emotion, be mindful of gestures, movements, and posturing, speak in a calm, slow, gentle voice, stay oriented to the present moment, practice attunement, and offer empathy and compassion for their experience. So in sum, an environment that supports co-regulation includes providing a warm, responsive relationship, structuring the environment, and teaching self-regulation skills. Now, capacity for self-regulation develops over time, from infancy through young adulthood, and sometimes even beyond. So consequently, the amount of co-regulation a child, youth, or a young adult needs will vary as they grow. And the graph presents a theoretical model of the balance of a young person's capacity for self-regulation and need for adult support. Now, as illustrated by the red ovals in the graph, there are two clear developmental periods where child and youth abilities to self-regulate can increase dramatically due to corresponding changes in brain development, and that is childhood and early adolescence. Support in these developmental windows may be particularly well-timed to smooth life transitions, first into school and then into adulthood. Now, as a child's ability to self-regulate increases, less teacher co-regulation is required. There are, as we know, individual differences in self-regulation capacity and need for co-regulation support. And these differences, like any other situation, may be based on internal factors such as biology, temperament, or skill development. And they may also result from environmental factors, including experiences of stress and adversity. Now, effective co-regulation, including the presence of a supportive adult in a calm environment, can provide safety and stability for these children, youth, and young adults, creating a space where they can begin to learn and enact self-regulatory skills. So, in fact, in a study conducted in Finnish daycare settings by Kirky and her colleagues, children used different regulation strategies in situations where a teacher was involved compared to those without a teacher, the latter, group 2, favoring physical regulation strategies when they acted independently. And when the teacher was involved, the teacher most typically redirected their activities and attention on the task at hand and were more likely to adapt their regulation activities. So what is this self-regulation that we have been talking about? Self-regulation involves the control of our emotions. Now, if you have ever talked yourself out of a bad mood or calmed yourself down when you are angry, you are displaying effective emotional self-regulation. The co-regulation that occurs in the classroom may then eventually lead to self-regulation, which brings out positive results, as we mentioned before, such as well-being, social skills, and academic success. And this is why caregiving, either by an educator or a parent, is a vital component in helping and supporting children to develop capacities for self-regulation. So, supporting children to self-regulate helps keep disruptive emotions in check and think before they act. It also helps maintain the proper mindset during challenging situations, leads the children to positive mental health and physical behavior, and also helps them to handle life's obstacles and make most of the situation, which I feel are 21st century skills and that all children should be taught throughout their education. This way, they are able to face any life stresses or any problems they come across and will definitely become more resilient. And this is what we want our younger generations to be: resilient and emotionally regulated. Now I want to share this quote with you that I came across because it sums co and self-regulation quite nicely. If the cycle of co-regulation between infant and caregiver happens consistently, predictably, and securely, the child's brain can then learn to self-regulate. If not, they will struggle to self-regulate their emotions and behavior as they grow older. So what are the implications in implementing the emotion regulation intervention program in the classroom? So first, we need to evaluate teacher preparation programs and professional development sessions in emotion regulation intervention, which I feel is an essential direction in school and national policy making. With the proper direction, the teacher may adopt emotion regulation strategies with greater assurance. Teachers benefit from the understanding and knowledge of the adoption of these antecedent-focused strategies via co-regulatory and cognitive scaffolding interactions, in order to best support children in interpreting and managing emotionally challenging situations in school. Emotion talk should also be part and parcel of verbally implementing the emotion regulation strategies, structuring the environment around opportunities for expressivity. Teachers can present an emotion chart in the classroom, talk about it, present emotion videos, talk about emotions in the classroom. There are also games that they can use in the classroom too, to give the children the opportunity to express themselves. Once they know how to express themselves, they will be able to identify their emotion regulation, identify their emotions better, and also adopt the emotion regulation strategies better too. Collaborative teaching is an important component in the implementation of the emotion regulation strategies in order to create hot cognition contexts to promote peer and self-regulation. Now, what do I mean by hot cognition contexts? They are collaborative learning situations which allow the students to regulate their own emotions and those of the group. And this is done by creating a cognitively stimulating environment. Collaborative learning situations can also give the teacher more opportunities to co-regulate with their students. And once they co-regulate, they can adopt these emotion regulation strategies. And the instructional and organizational policies and ethos of the school must foster the efficacy of emotion regulation, teaching and learning, recognizing and approving the dual role that the teacher holds in both the academic and socio-emotional situations. So the teacher has a dual role. It is the academic role and also the socio-emotional role, where the teacher teaches these emotion regulation skills. So I'm going to conclude with a quote. When we work on a child's self-regulation, we are creating that stable internal platform that makes growth possible, any and all kinds of growth. And I believe a lot in this. So I'd like to thank you for your attention. If you are interested in participating in a hands-on emotion regulation training to assist students in regulating their emotions, you can contact me on the email shown for further details. And I also want to express my gratitude to Michelle and James and the Faculty of Education at the University of Malta and the Center of Education and Neuroscience, namely my main doctoral supervisor, Professor Andy Tolmi, for giving me this opportunity to share my work with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Erika. Thanks for a great presentation, very, very insightful. I have a question, but we have other questions in the Q&A, which I would like, to offer you so that maybe you can answer some of these questions that we have here. A first question that we have is, I think it's related also to what you were saying. Is self-regulation strategies training done yearly with educators in Malta? Is this something that is happening right now, or can you tell us a bit about it?
Currently, we have introduced this emotion regulation intervention program in the initial teacher training at the University of Malta. So we are teaching prospective teachers on these emotion regulation skills. However, there needs to be further work on professional developmental sessions on newly qualified teachers and also teachers who have been teaching for a while.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Andy. Interesting presentation, especially about co-regulation. It seems sometimes to overemphasize individual responsibility for emotion regulation. In the earlier slides, would it not be better to say that emotion regulation can lead to more appropriate behavior rather than overclaiming the potential for emotion regulation? That's basically his question. It seems that much is being loaded onto the child's response rather than the causes of what the child is experiencing and feeling. So what he's trying to say is, if emotion regulation can lead actually to more appropriate behavior, if it's regulated.
Yes, emotion regulation is presented through co-regulation. So co-regulation is the pedagogical tool that the teacher uses to use these emotion regulation strategies to reach out to the student, to be able to show and present the student the proper behavior when they are faced with these situations, with these distressful situations.
Okay, thanks. We have another question from Natalie. Should one focus on the feeling or on the underlying need?
I think on both, because I think it's like a vicious circle. The feeling and the underlying need come about together because they are interconnected. These emotion regulation strategies through co-regulation would reach out to the feeling and also the underlying need. So they will be, what's the word, the proper word used, will be directing to both the feeling and the underlying needs. Targeting is the word, would be targeting both the feeling and the underlying need through these emotion regulation strategies.
Okay. There's a question from Laura who says, this was so useful. Have you linked any of this with emotion coaching research?
I think emotion coaching is very similar to this research that I've done. I think they're just interchangeable words. Emotion coaching and emotion regulation intervention program are based on the same research, on the same concept.
Okay. Kim is asking, can we get the list of how to co-regulate again? So you had the list on a slide there. Yes. I'm not sure whether you can share it. We can even share it via email if it's not possible to do it now, Erika. So that was Kim's question.
If you wish to go back to the recording, she can take a screenshot, maybe of the recording as well.
Yes, she can do that because it's one of the slides that you've shown. All right. Now there's a question about what are your thoughts on cultural differences in emotional regulation research? How applicable would you say are these strategies to other cultures?
Yes, in fact, culture is one of the components of emotion. So one emotion felt in one culture is different to another emotion felt in a different culture. So these emotion regulation strategies have to be adopted accordingly to the culture by the teacher within that situation, within the culture that the students are in. So the teacher has, through co-regulation, can I wouldn't say manipulate, but can sort of change the strategy, the way to modify a situation, or the way to reframe the situation according to the culture, the cultural rules that the students are in.
Okay, we have a comment from Ingrid who says that aside from training the educators, it is crucial that we continue investing in parent education when it comes to self-regulation strategies. To what extent do you agree with this, Erika?
I believe in it. In fact, these webinars were both for educators and parents, because I believe that parents are a crucial stakeholder in the children's education. And I think if the teachers, the school, and the parents work hand in hand, I think the children will benefit much more. And yes, when I was conducting my research within the schools, the teachers specifically told me this would also be good to train parents so that they could work hand in hand in regulating the children's emotions.
All right. Monica is asking, is there a universal standard of emotional regulation, since we know cultural and religious approaches and differences?
Yes, I think we've answered that question.
Yes, I think we've answered.
Teachers can modify when we're talking about, for example, reframing, cognitive change via reappraisal. they can modify that situation or situation modification according to the culture that they are in.
Okay, we have a similar question on the role of parents. It's from Mark, who says that self-regulation is a great tool. However, if the parents are not self-regulated, how can they help their children regulate themselves? And he thinks that there are certain conditions like ADHD, dyslexia, other needs, who need special ways of teaching methods, as this can trigger emotional burnout.
We know that many children, not many, there are many children in schools that have either conditions such as ADHD or dyslexia, and those are literacy, specific literacy difficulties, and that can, yes, take a toll on the parents. So if the parents are not self-regulated, they will not be able to regulate their children's emotions. And the same goes for teachers. And this came out in my research as well. The teachers actually told me we have to also be self-regulated to be able to regulate the children's emotions. So both teachers and parents have to be self-regulated, practice these emotion regulation strategies to be able to regulate their children's emotions.
Mm-hmm. Question by Raphael. In recent years, there has been increased discussion and condemnation of domestic violence and other forms of abusive behavior, but without much discussion of the emotional foundation of such behavior. Can you comment about any link between children's emotional regulation skills and later adult behavior?
Yes, I believe that if we teach children to regulate their emotions from a very young age, from 0 years, and I believe that childcare givers in the childcare centers are trained on these emotion regulation strategies, start regulating these children's emotions from a very young age. And like that, as the teachers along the years in kindergarten, primary, secondary school, even tertiary education, because we do get students in tertiary education who are not emotionally stable, okay, due to various reasons, we need to practice these emotion regulation strategies with the children so they will be able to internalize these strategies and be able to, and it results in self-regulation. It has to become part and parcel of their routine and start using these emotion regulation strategies without even thinking. So it has to become part and parcel of their routine, of their life.
There's another question by Andy, also related to parents, and he asks, how far do you see studies of parental relationships and their connection to long-term well-being as being relevant to the teacher-child relationships, given the very different conditions in a classroom setting compared to the home?
I believe it is really important. I think the parents are the most crucial, sometimes I say even more than the teacher, to regulate their students' emotions. And once we regulate their students' emotions, this will result in long-term positive social well-being, besides academic success, because if the child is able to regulate their emotions, the child will be able to focus on their task at hand at that point in time. And eventually, as they grow older, they become more resilient because they're constantly facing these situations.
Mm-hmm. There is one last question from Natalie, but it's on ADHD. I'm not sure whether you can answer this question because we had a session on ADHD, but Natalie is asking, people with ADHD struggle with emotional regulation. What coping strategies would you recommend specifically for a person with ADHD?
I would go back to the, I'm not specialized in ADHD, but I know and I'm aware that they suffer from emotion regulation dysregulation at times. However, these emotion regulation strategies would help ADHD students because it does not entail this intervention program that I came up with in my research, does not entail any resources planned by the teacher, any time taken from the timetable. It is embedded within the curriculum and it is all verbal and modeling these emotion regulation strategies within the occurring situation. So the child will be able to see how to solve that situation there and then whilst it is happening. And if we keep on repeating this, the children will then be able to take this on. But I suggest that should go back also to the excellent video webinar that there was on ADHD, I think by Matthew Slocum.
I think so, yeah. Yes. Okay, there's another question. Is it still needed to bring up emotional regulation education even in later years, example, higher education?
Yes, we spoke about it earlier, from 0 years, sometimes even adults. We need to use these emotion regulation strategies. But I suggest that until teaching is done, teachers and even parents at home keep regulating their children's emotions. And I believe from 0 years up to tertiary education.
Erika, I have a question myself to ask you before we go to Michelle. Maybe Michelle has a question as well. I would like to ask you just if you had to give a suggestion to a teacher, okay, related to regulating emotions in the classroom, what would that be? And why do you think it's really important?
I think, I have a passion for this topic. I've worked on it for 5 whole years, and the more I worked on it, and the more I delved deep into the subject, the more I believe that emotion regulation is so important, because it is the basis of anything, of everything. Even us adults, when we've had a fight with a friend or with our partner or with our parents and we go to work, we are not fully focused because we're constantly thinking of that situation that happened earlier. Just imagine children at school who come from poor social backgrounds, or who have difficulty at coping at school, or who have just fought with a friend in the playground during break time. We need to help these children regulate their emotions using these emotion regulation strategies. And like that, they become very resilient beings and able to face any problem or stressor that they come across on a daily basis.
Thanks, Erika. Michelle, not sure whether you'd like to ask a question or maybe.
Yes, rather than a question. First of all, well done, Erika. It was very well explained, and the fact that you took the time to explore each slide slowly and in detail helped us to connect and engage to what you are saying. I reiterate what one of the people in our audience said about the need for parents to be aware of the importance of emotional regulation. And this is something that as a teacher educator, I feel an obligation for, that you cannot just focus or invest energy in one area of the educational system. We cannot just think about the teachers, what they are doing in class, and about the students, but also about a very important stakeholder, the parents. And unless they are aware and they have the necessary skills, they don't need to become experts, professionals in the area, but that they have the right approach, the right attitude to this important area of learning, and to be able also to question what is happening with their children, why they are behaving in a certain manner, and what can they do to support their children advance in their emotional maturity. I think it was an important insight that one of our the teachers in the audience has made, and we should, as teacher educators, also invest energy in that.
I believe it, because I believe that I've seen when there is collaboration, deep collaboration between parents and educators, the children benefit so much more, both academically, socially, and emotionally.
Thanks, Michelle. Thank you, Erika. I think we can conclude this webinar here. I would like to thank you again, Erika, for organizing this series with us. Also, would like to thank the Institute of Education at University College London for being our collaborators in also providing us with experts in the field so that they could share their experience and their research with us all, and also the Faculty of Education and also Education Neuroscience Hub for your collaboration. So I thank you all, and we hope to see you next time in maybe our 4th series of the Connect to Learning webinar series. Thank you all and have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.